Welcome everyone to today's webinar on the benefits of blockchain for nonprofits. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items I want to address. So just so you know, you can maximize or minimize the webinar pane during the presentation using the red and orange arrow buttons. During the webinar, we definitely encourage you to ask questions. In that same webinar pane, you can see a questions box where you can type in your questions and our presenters will be answering those at the end as time allows. Also, I want to make sure everyone has good audio quality. So if you are on your telephone, make sure you select the phone call audio option. And if you're on your computer today, make sure you select the computer audio option. And if you're joining us today for CPE, make sure you're using your own personal computer with your login and your own unique URL. Make sure that you're logged into the online software for at least 50 consecutive minutes within the scheduled time frame of the live webinar. Actively respond to at least 75% of the polling questions. Today we'll have 4 polling questions, so you must answer at least 3. And you need to also complete the evaluation survey at the end of the webinar. Also, please note that as a participant, you will receive an email within 48 hours with a link to the slide deck and today's recording. And today's learning objectives are to identify the key characteristics of blockchain that make it so effective, to recognize how blockchain's unique traits can work for nonprofits, evaluate how your nonprofit can begin on-ramping blockchain to take advantage of the new digital money.
Hey, Marie, this is Andres. I'm going to jump in here just for a sec. So one thing that we discussed internally quite a bit in deciding what we wanted to cover was, do we get into using blockchain technology for traceability of donated dollars? Blockchain can be a great technology solution to enable that. But the reality is that we haven't seen enough solutions go to market and enough adoption to spend a good amount of time on that today. And so we're going to be focusing on the use case that we are seeing, which is accepting cryptocurrency and all sorts of digital money in form of donation. So that's really what we will be focused on today.
Great, and with that, I'll kick it off to our presenters.
Well, thank you, Andres. And yeah, my name is Dean Quiambo here, partner with Armanino. Very excited for today's webinar. We can almost change the title. How do nonprofits accept cryptocurrency and grow revenue? If we change it that way, everybody would be listening. I think digital money is a strong part of our future, and this is going to be a big part of nonprofits and their engagement and moving forward. I will say that we will start off the webinar with a little bit of foundation setting and leveling the table, and then we'll get definitely into accepting and policies and things of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dean. This is Andres. I head up our blockchain practice here at Armanino. We're one of the very few firms in the country that has really dedicated an entire practice now to this technology. And we do it because we firmly believe that this is shaping the future of the internet and the future of money. And so hopefully after today's section, you will agree with some of those slides.
Hi, this is Eric Thomas. I'm a leader in our outsourced accounting practice, which is in consulting, as well as our nonprofit practice. Armanino, as many of you may know, has over 700 nonprofit clients. And I have to tell you how excited I am to be talking about something that can grow revenue and is an innovation. Usually I get called into these to talk about internal controls and mitigating risk, best practices for accounting. So I'm really excited to be here with you today talking about how you can grow your nonprofit.
All right, well, our agenda, we'll get into what is blockchain, talk about cryptocurrency, why you should care, and I think that's going to be very clear, and how to get started. With that said, I think that brings us to our very first polling question, and we definitely want you guys to get your CPE, so please feel free and everybody answer the question.
Okay, so the first question is, what is your current understanding of blockchain? So is this still new to me and I'm here to learn? I understand blockchain, but not its benefits. It is important for the growth of my organization, but I'm not sure where to start. And then the last one, I liquidated all my assets to buy Bitcoin. So let us know what your answers are.
Come on, somebody be.
Yeah, Dean, I was going to say, did you liquidate all your assets?
We got close.
Not yet. Yeah,
close.
Maybe after this webinar.
Great, and we'll go ahead and close the polls. So it looks like most people are here to learn.
All right.
We got one person who's liquidated everything. Awesome.
All right. Let's do it. Let's do it. All right, here we go.
Okay, so we do want to start by maybe a little bit of a broader take on this, which is this is part of the change that is happening every day, and blockchain is one of those transformational technologies that are happening. But there's a few others out there. Of course, cloud technology, AI, Internet of Things. There's sort of a whole list here, and Armanino likes to help you in navigating all those different technologies. And so one of the things we do is we survey our clients, and the good thing is our clients really agree with us that this is happening, and transformational technology is happening at an ever increasing pace. And so 73% of our clients believe that if their organization fails to transform today, it's not going to exist in the future. And then what we also know is all of this is happening at an increasing pace. And so 80% of our clients believe that the pace at which the company needs to change is accelerating. So we firmly agree with that. And so we use an acronym. We use the acronym VUCA to kind of summarize this thinking around technology. And so we believe that it's a volatile and uncertain, complex and ambiguous world out there. Now, let's not get too negative here. We really embrace that as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to set yourself apart. And so again, it's all about how you handle this VUCA world. So what does that all mean for blockchain? Well, first of all, 84% of executives say that their organization already has some level of involvement with blockchain technology. The technology is fairly new, but there's elements of it that have been around for many years. And so the very first blockchain project is really Bitcoin, has already been out there for about 10 years now. So it's not entirely new, I would say. Oh, there we go. Sorry. And then I got some bigger numbers even for you here. So when Gartner tries to predict what the value is going to be of this technology in the future, they sometimes come up with these staggering amounts and discuss whether it's 176 billion by 2025 or 3 trillion by 2030. I think the truth is people don't necessarily know at that level of detail, but what they do know and what we very much agree on is that this is going to be a very impactful new technology. And then the last number there is by 2022, more than 1 billion people are going to have some level of data about them that is stored on a blockchain. I think that's in fact a conservative one. If you look at some of the projects that are in the pipeline today, whether it's at Facebook or Amazon, the Chinese central bank, there's all these projects that are being developed, which once those go live, you're looking at a much higher number than 1 billion. So this is already happening, I guess, is the my clicker's not working again, guys. Is sort of the summary here of this slide. Okay. So just a few definitions to make sure that we're talking about the same things here. So the way we like to think of blockchain is it's a digital ledger that keeps track of all of the transactions that are recorded using the currency that's native to that blockchain. So if I send 1 Bitcoin to Eric here, then that transaction is going to be recorded on the Bitcoin blockchain. Yeah, something is up with, okay. Cryptocurrency transaction is really then the movement of cryptocurrency from one address to another. And this is viewable on a blockchain. So to go back to my example, so I just sent that 1 Bitcoin to Eric. So you'll actually see that transaction within the next 10 minutes, or I guess it could be up to 10 minutes. You will see that transaction occurring, and you'll actually see that in a block, and it's publicly available. So what are these blocks? Well, these blocks are really, you got to look at them as almost pages in a ledger. And so we add all these transactions into a page, into a block, and then that block gets added to the ledger. And so as a CPA and as many of the accountants on the phone, that makes a ton of sense, right? It's almost like sort of technology and accounting coming together in a really exciting and fascinating new world. So that's pretty cool.
It's a digital audit trail.
There you go.
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah, accountants love that audit trail, baby.
Yeah, we get, our audit folks get very excited about this technology because it's this sort of single source of truth ledger world, which is an accountant's, dream come true. What is a cryptocurrency public address? Well, this is kind of like an email address. So this is or like a bank account number. So this is something that you can share, and once people have that, they can send you cryptocurrency, but they can't necessarily access your account in any other way. So a few more terms here. What is a cryptocurrency wallet? Well, this is a piece of software that allows you to manage multiple public keys in an easy way. So kind of think of this like your email software that you would be using, like Outlook or something. That's a cryptocurrency wallet. And then what's a smart contract or what's a token? And this definition is a little complicated, I think. The way I like to think of it is it's a simple if-then type of statement. So for example, if Eric sends me $1,000, then send him 0.1 Bitcoin. That is the most commonly used version of a smart contract today. If somebody sends me X amount of US dollars, I will send them X amount of cryptocurrency or tokens right away. And that's in a contract that's automated. That's really a set of ones and zeros. It doesn't, the contract doesn't care whether it's raining or whether Eric is in a different country or what his background is or anything like that. So we know that these contracts will get executed.
And these smart contracts, this is definitely going to be a very high growth area of blockchain, right?
Absolutely.
This is definitely
This is the
happening
future.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is happening all over the place.
This is the future of it, yeah, and we'll get to that. But the idea here is you have digital money, and so Bitcoin and Litecoin, Ethereum, and all of these versions are digital money, and that's cool. But what's even cooler is programmable digital money, and so that's what smart contracts really add to the equation. We'll get into that in more detail later. And then consensus is the way in which the participants in the network agree on the state of the ledger. And so there's a few different mechanisms to achieve consensus, but think about this Bitcoin environment, just to focus on that for a second, where we have this public ledger. And so let's say everybody on the call would have access to this public ledger, and we would all be recording transactions and then trying to submit these transactions into our blockchain. Well, how do we make sure that we're all agreeing on what is the right next block? And so there's a few different ways that these networks can reach consensus. Proof of work is one example. Proof of stake is another example. Now, to be honest, to transact in cryptocurrency, you don't need to know how that works. Like, that gets you into a level of technicality that is really not required, but it is interesting. And if we have time, we can get into what some of those different consensus mechanisms are. So let's focus on Bitcoin for a second, not because we're particularly bullish about it or because we're long-term investors or anything like that, but simply because it's the longest running blockchain experiment. And because of that, presumably the most successful one as well. As you will learn, the longer a blockchain runs, the more stable it becomes and the more we can rely on the integrity of the data. And so ultimately what Bitcoin is, it's one example of a blockchain. So blockchain is really the underlying technology here. There's about 2,000 different public blockchains at this point and many more private blockchains as well. And so Bitcoin is just the most common example, if you will. So just a few more definitions here. So Bitcoin and all cryptocurrency is 100% digital. And for that reason, it can be a little sort of mind bending. It's not something that you can hold. It's not something tangible. And then you have to think of money in the broader context of money. So we use money as a means of exchange to go buy a cup of coffee. We use money as a store of value. So if you're putting some money away, you hope that that money doesn't lose its value. If you live in a country like Argentina, for example, that might be a real big deal. We also use money as an accounting unit. So if you go and buy a car, you want to be quoted the price for that car in US dollars, not in cups of coffee or water bottles or something else. And so different cryptocurrencies tend to do really well in fulfilling different functions of money. So we don't necessarily want to assume Bitcoin, for example, is going to fulfill all three functions in a great way. In fact, what we've seen is different Bitcoins tend to focus on different use cases and do really well there. And so, like I said, the Bitcoin project has been around for quite a few years. The first transaction took place in May 2010, and that was 2 pizzas that were sold for 10,000 Bitcoin. Dean, do you know what that is worth in today's market price?
You're going to tell me a lot of dollars.
It is about 800 million bucks.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love pizza, but not that much. Good Lord. Wow.
Yeah. So really the idea behind blockchain in general is that you try to interact in this direct peer-to-peer way. And so what that means in the context of Bitcoin is you don't need a bank or an intermediary. You can send money to somebody else. So I can send that 1 Bitcoin to Eric without needing to ask permission to anybody else. And you can think of other examples where that's become sort of the normal way of doing things. So, and usually when we create a digital version of something, that does become the normal way of doing things. So think about photography. So once we create digital versions of pictures, we don't need to ask permission to anyone to send those around. You can just drop them in an email, you drop them in a text message. It becomes super easy to share. Same thing with email. Once we digitalized mail, it became this extremely useful, very easy to send type of product that just exploded in its use cases very quickly. The same thing happens once you create a digital version of money is our take on this. Once I don't need to ask a bank to facilitate a transaction between me and somebody else, I have now the freedom to transact as fast, as much, as frictionless, and frankly as cheap as I can. And so there's no bank or no government or no one that really runs or controls the Bitcoin blockchain. And many of these blockchains operate like that. And we'll get into sort of how that works and why that can be a good thing. And then finally, people tend to be concerned about the security here. This is a question that I get in my personal life quite a bit. So when people once they sort of want to invest a little bit and they want to buy their first Bitcoins, they always ask me, well, how do I know that this thing is secure? How do I know that no one's going to steal my Bitcoins? I've heard of Mt. Gox. I've heard of all these other situations. People lose these things. The truth is the technology itself, this idea of this distributed ledger, it's really built on some very foundational principles of cryptography. So it really starts with safety and security. It's not a feature that was put in later on, which is what you see with a lot of software applications and networks today. It really starts with security, safety, cryptography. And all of them are governed by a set of rules. And so, like I said, some of them better as a means of exchange and some of them better as a store of value. And really that depends on what those rules are, what the protocol is that the blockchain is using. And it's cool because you can sort of vote with your feet. So if you don't like what one protocol is doing, you just buy a different protocol and use that one. If you don't like Bitcoin, then maybe try Litecoin and see what that does. And it has some slight variations to how the Bitcoin protocol works. And so there's about 2,000 different public blockchains out there today that people are experimenting with. And then there's no physical underlying asset that is backing the value of these things. And so one of the questions we get asked quite a bit is, why would Bitcoin be worth $8,000 or wherever it's trading today? And the truth is it's simple supply and demand. So if people are willing to pay $8,000 for it, then that's what it's worth. And Bitcoin has a digital scarcity element to it, and most cryptocurrencies do. And so in Bitcoin's case, what that means is there's only ever going to be 11 million Bitcoins. I'm trying to think now of whether it's 11 or 12, but anyway, there's a certain set of Bitcoin that will ever be created. And so there's an element of scarcity to take into account here. All right. Well, if you're still with us, I applaud you, because there's a lot of theory here that we're doing. I swear it's only a few more slides on the pure theory point. So we talked about blockchains being immutable and tamper resistant. So let's get into the details of how that works just a little bit. So here's block 51, and this particular blockchain has a consensus mechanism that is proof of work. And so the first line kind of shows that whoever added the block did the work. They had to solve this really hard mathematical equation, but once they solved it, they can show by putting the proof of work that they did the work. And so that's typically the first line of the new block. The second line is a hash of the previous block. So it's a cryptographic algorithmic hash of the previous block, and that's a really fancy word, but what it really means is you take a certain input, you put it through an algorithm, and you get a certain output on the other side. And you're always going to get the same output for the same input. But if you only have the output, you can't work your way back to the input. So think of it like a one-way mathematical equation, if you will. And every time we add a new block, it's sort of like adding a new layer of amber. Everybody remembers that fly trapped in amber in Jurassic Park. And once you add one layer of amber, one layer of sap, you can still go back and make some changes to that fly. That's the same thing with blockchains. Once you only have one layer, one block, it's extremely difficult, but it's not completely ruled out that you can go back and make some changes to the previous block. But every time you add a new block, it becomes exponentially harder, mathematically more unlikely that, or less likely that anyone can tamper with the integrity of the data. So that's why I said the longest running blockchains tend to have the highest data integrity and are the most reliable. And so Bitcoin is just a great example of that. So as we add more blocks, we use the same mechanism here. So blockchains are shared, decentralized ledgers is the way we like to think of them. And so it's not one organization, it's not one individual, there's no Bitcoin company or Bitcoin organization. It's really
Bitcoin bank or anything
Bitcoin
like that.
Bank, that's right. It's really a lot of different actors around the world that make sure these blocks keep on getting added. Okay, so how do we think about this technology as a whole? I'm going to ask you to kind of step back now for a second and try to think of this more at a meta level here. So at Armanino, we think of any new technology as going through a number of adoption curves. And the first adoption curve that we expect to see with blockchain technology is around digital money, digital transactions, so payments, money transfer, digital asset creation, and even fundraising. And we think that that adoption curve is underway, but it will start to really exponentially take off in the next few quarters. And there's a few things that are happening in the world that gives us some level of confidence that this is happening. So there's of course the announcement around Libra. So this is not just Facebook, but organizations like PayPal and Visa and MasterCard and many others that are creating a first corporate-backed digital currency.
And Andres, if anybody doesn't know the Libra announcement, what is that?
Yeah, so it's this cryptocurrency called Libra that will be created by 100 companies by the time it goes live. And so Facebook is just one of them, but eBay and PayPal and MasterCard, Visa, a bunch of other organizations will be part of this.
Basically, all the organizations that are doing all the digital transactions today.
Well,
a lot of them.
A lot of them, yeah, not quite. So interestingly enough, Dean, what we've seen since this announcement is no official announcement, but there's a lot of news that is leaking out around Amazon, Walmart, Apple a bunch of the other tech giants that are creating their own version of this as well. And
Right.
so I wouldn't be surprised if by the time Libra actually goes live, you're going to see, maybe 4 or 5 corporate coins at that point already.
Okay.
So we're going to have this universe of, you're going to have these decentralized, sort of call them fully independent cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Litecoin, Ethereum, and the likes. Then you're going to have these corporate coins, Facebook, Libra, but Goldman Sachs announced that they're building or thinking about building their own cryptocurrency. Like I said, Amazon, Apple,
JP Morgan.
JP Morgan's already created their own coin. So you'll have those coins, and then you'll have government-backed coins as well. So this is something that just came out in the last few weeks as well. So the Central Bank of China is experimenting with their own digital currency, their own cryptocurrency as well. So you'll have these government-backed coins as well. So you'll really have 3 different types of digital currency in the future. And then what we're also seeing is retailers like Starbucks, Whole Foods, AT&T are accepting cryptocurrency as form of payment already today. And so you're just seeing this very fast or accelerating pace of retailers accepting cryptocurrency.
And we're seeing that in the sports world as well.
Yeah, no, that was kind of cool to see. The Dallas Mavericks now accept cryptocurrency. The Sacramento Kings already did it a few years ago.
Yep.
And not just for tickets, you can buy anything in the stadium with crypto. In fact, this is cool. They created a digital collectible sort of a Kings token that fans can buy and can trade. It's almost like a baseball card or something. So
but so adoption is happening. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is that it is
happening. Yeah.
For a while it was, what is Bitcoin? And now it's everybody seems to be diving in or wanting to be diving in.
Absolutely.
Well, at the local level, I went to the batting cage with my daughters, went to get more tokens. Right next to the credit card machine, it says, "We accept crypto." This is a mom and pop batting cage, and they're accepting cryptocurrency. So it is here.
With regards to accepting cryptocurrency, Armanino, we accept cryptocurrency as payment.
Yes, we do. That was a big deal for us. We had clients for years who were basically asking us nicely, "You got to accept crypto because it's really critical to our mission." And we were able to sort of tell them no for a while, but then eventually you got to walk the walk. You can't just talk the talk. So we went through a process ourselves where we prepared ourselves to accept crypto. So we accept over 2,000 different cryptocurrencies today. At least technologically, we are prepared to accept 2,000 different cryptocurrencies. I think in reality, we're limiting ourselves to the more popular ones. But so that's the first adoption curve. The second adoption curve is once you have digital money, you can create programmable digital money. And that's really where it becomes super interesting. Now you can create these automated contracts, the software, the smart technology on top of money. Once you've expressed money in ones and zeros, there's just a whole lot you can do with it if you add a software layer to it. And so that's kind of what we're seeing happening in blockchain and crypto innovation right now at some of the startup projects we work with. And then this last phase, so we call that the blockchain-enabled Web 3.0, is a world in which blockchains are talking to each other seamlessly. They're talking to companies' IT systems. It integrates with your ERP environment, and ultimately you'll see a whole group of new business models come out of that. Not different from what we saw with the internet becoming more widely adopted, and then companies like Airbnb and social media and Uber and the likes come into fruition. So Armanino created a blockchain lab. That's my job here at the firm, is to head up that lab, and we focus on all of these solutions that really today help you in this digital transaction on ramp. And so there's a number of solutions there. I'm not going to go through them, but for the webinar today, we'll mainly focus on how to on-ramp and what that means.
Okay, second polling question. Let's get to it so everybody get their CPE.
Great. So the next question is, what is blockchain? Is it a new type of cloud technology, a digital ledger that is decentralized, trusted, and autonomous, just another form of digital payment, or are you still unsure? And then
We're gonna-
just also as a reminder, just so everyone knows, you will receive an email within 48 hours with a link to the presentation and as well as today's recording.
Guess we're about to see if I did an okay job explaining all this, right? If we get a lot of unsures, I'm gonna feel pretty bad here.
Okay, let's go ahead and close the polls and find out.
I'm just happy they're still here, Andres.
Oh man! All right.
All right.
That's very kind of everyone in the audience today here, because, like I said, this is, you got to hear this stuff over and over. It's something that internally we talk about a lot as well, and it can be truthfully mind-bending technology. Okay, so I'm going to spend a few minutes now. So we really have been focusing on how does the technology work, and while that might be important now, in a few years, no one's going to really think about that anymore. Just like we don't really think about how the internet works anymore. That's not really relevant at this point. And so what I'm going to ask you to do now is almost forget about all of the tech stuff that I just explained, and let's talk about why, from a business point of view, this is going to really matter, and why we look at this as this has the potential to become the Web 3.0. So we sort of, Web 2.0, where we are right now, is this internet that's, I would say, dominated by less than 10 companies. In the US, you got Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Apple, and then you got Tencent, Alibaba, a handful of other companies in Asia. But effectively, the internet is pretty much dominated by a handful of very large networks today. And so blockchains offer an alternative to that, because at their core, blockchains really are networks. And so just to take a step back in history here a little bit, when we do interesting things as humans, it tends to be because we can collaborate. And usually when we collaborate, the easy way to do that is we appoint some kind of leader, a chief, a CEO, a priest, a king, a tyrant sometimes, an emperor, whatever it might be. We put somebody in charge, and that person in charge ends up making decisions. And then a few thousand years ago, we came up with this concept of markets. And when you have a market, you tend to put buyers and sellers in front of each other, and they figure out a way to do business, and you don't usually need someone to sort of arbitrate how those transactions occur. And so we've created financial markets, stock markets, but now more recently, we've created markets for advertisement, such as Google and Facebook. We've created markets for all sorts of retail products, Amazon, eBay, and we've created markets for transportation now with Uber and Lyft. We've created markets for hotel rooms with Airbnb and the likes. And so we've created all these digital markets, and that works pretty well, except for one thing. It involves us consistently trusting that whoever is managing that network is doing the right thing, that they're making the right decisions. And sometimes they don't. And so we saw that in 2008 with all of the bailouts and the financial crisis, and really eroded our trust in our financial system and a trust in banks. And that's where Bitcoin originally came from. But you see that today as well with some of the concern people have around the dominance of some of these companies that I mentioned in our Internet 2.0. And so what blockchains offer is an alternative to that. Blockchains ultimately are a building block for a new type of internet that is decentralized, that is not sort of hosted and run and organized through these very large existing organizations. It sort of goes back to the foundational promise of the internet, which is this level playing field where everyone can run their own little website and start a business. And so the promise of blockchain technology is that allows us to go back to that by creating a world where I can do business with somebody else without needing a chief, a king, an emperor, or a CEO of a large tech company making decisions on how ultimately the transaction is going to be run. And so people refer to this as the trustless internet. I don't need to know the person on the other side of the equation. I can do business with somebody in China. I've never met them. I don't need to know their background. I don't need to know what the company represents, but I can do business with them because I'm following the logic of the protocol, really, of code. And ultimately code is math. It's ones and zeros. And so code executes. It doesn't care what your political beliefs are. It doesn't care what your skin color is. It doesn't care in what country you operate. it's just going to execute. And so this is the promise that blockchain holds. And there's a few foundational concepts here that I'll go through real quick. So like I said, they are decentralized. So it's not operated by one party. And the good news there is if you're building a business on top of this type of environment, you can be extremely vulnerable to changes that the operators make. So for example, if you have a business today that's highly reliant on Google search, well, if Google changes their algorithm overnight, your business might have to pivot after that. Blockchains don't operate like that. They're extremely stable. They're very slow to change. In fact, they hardly ever change. And so this makes them extremely good building blocks for this Web 3.0. What's also different compared to the Web 2.0 is they're all open source. And this is really where the magic happens. Once you open source innovation, it's like putting innovation on steroids. And so blockchain technology, cryptocurrency technology is really innovation on steroids. If I don't like the protocol of what the Bitcoin blockchain does, I can make some slight changes to it. It's all public, it's all open. I'll call it the Andres coin, and I can launch it tomorrow. And people can start transacting in it. Now, Dean, would you buy an Andres coin for $8,000 a coin right now?
No.
Yeah. So
sorry.
So
I like you, Andres, but I just looked up the price of Bitcoin, and no.
Yeah, no. So it doesn't mean, it's not because something is open source and I can create a better version of something in my mind that people will follow. So again, because it's all supply and demand, no one necessarily ends up using Andres coin just because I created and just because I launched it. But at least I can go through the Bitcoin code and I can say, I like this, I don't like that. This is something I'm going to borrow. In fact, when you look at Libra, the project that I mentioned, what Libra really did was it took the best elements of existing cryptocurrencies out there and combined them into this new coin. It's actually a really, in my mind, is a really promising coin. And so the way that they're able to do that is because it's all open source, and this is global because it's blockchain is global. This is a 24/7 innovation on steroids ecosystem. They are trusted. So I mentioned this already, but it's really, blockchain is really built on cryptography, and because of that, we reach these levels of immutability, traceability of records that we just haven't seen in existing databases and existing technology as a whole. And that's part of the issue that we have with Web 2.0 as well. The amount of credit card theft and personal records and privacy, it becomes a bigger problem by the day. And then they're autonomous. And what I mean with that is if you want to build something in our current version of the internet, you need to go to AWS, you need to go to Azure, and you're going to have to pay some kind of hosting fee. And the day you stop paying that, basically your network stops to exist. What blockchains do is they think about that issue at the beginning. And so they build in these game theoretical incentives, which, if you recall, I mentioned mining and the ability to be able to add a block with Bitcoin. And so if you add a block, you would actually get a mining fee. So in Bitcoin's world, you'd get a few $10,000 for adding that block. And so the network is autonomous in that way. So I don't mean this in like an AI type of way. I mean it in an infrastructure type of way. Again, that makes it a very good foundational block for Web 3.0. And let's see. So now we're getting into the kind of more practical side of the story. So where are we today? So Bitcoin's been around for almost 10 years. It's still extremely dominant. So the whole market, this is as of yesterday, the entire market of cryptocurrencies is valued at $225 billion worldwide. Right now, worldwide. Yep. So you see that at the graph on the top left. It was at 450 billion for a little bit of time back in 2018 and 19. We're back to a more healthy 225 billion right now, but that's very much dominated by Bitcoin. So you see here that whole right side, how much dominance Bitcoin has over everybody else. It's still quite impressive. All right.
polling question number 3. Please answer this thing so we can get your CPE. And then we do have a question that came in that I think maybe we'll spend a quick minute on.
So the third polling question is, what are digital assets? Do they enable digital value exchange? They can be fungible or non-fungible. They can be offered to the public through ICOs, STOs, or IEOs, or all of the above.
So this is a really hard question, I just realized, because we actually cut a slide on some of this stuff.
No.
We figured this was going to be too technical. This is my fault, guys.
This is the extra credit question.
This is the extra credit one, yeah.
But with that said, I kind of like all of the above.
You're absolutely right.
Am I?
Yeah.
All
It
right.
is all of the above, but we didn't get into what is fungible, non-fungible, any of that stuff. But yeah, there's different mechanisms of going to market. There's some digital tokens represent a real world live asset like real estate or a house or a piece of art, and other ones don't. So that's the fungible, non-fungible gap here. So the question that we got in was, doesn't the open source introduce major internal control weaknesses? I would say not if you're simply transacting in cryptocurrency. So it's not because it's open source that it's sort of open for hacking or loopholes or anything like that. By the way, the technology that you will end up using to safeguard your cryptocurrency, to custody your cryptocurrency, that's not open source. So there's a difference here in the code that sort of enables the blockchain itself, and then what you would use to safeguard a coin or token once it comes in. Okay.
Yeah, so now we've gone through our technology lesson in excruciating detail. What does this mean to you? Why is it important? Just a few months ago, in April of 2019, the Ripple co-founder, Chris Larson, donated $25 million in XRP to San Francisco State University. That is a big number.
It's a big number. I mean, I don't know many organizations that are saying no to that.
No.
Yeah, I think, and by the way, this is where donations is one thing, and I know Fidelity Charitable, Eric, is another one that comes to mind. I know the number there is 100 million. They started accepting cryptocurrency back in 2015 and have gotten north of 100 million in cryptocurrency donations and since then. So donations is one thing. I think the other thing that reemphasize here is the amount of retailers that we see accepting crypto: Microsoft, AT&T, Expedia, Shopify, Intuit, Subway, KFC, Baskin Robbins, just to name a few here. That list is just growing by the day.
Growing fast.
Every day.
And so, like, why does all of this matters? Well, if you talk to our tax folks, our high net worth planning people, they always tell our high net worth clients, contribute your appreciated assets. Well, if people have been sitting on digital assets for a while, they have definitely appreciated a good amount, and they're experiencing that appreciation. So this is an area that is ripe for our nonprofits to get the contributions.
Right, and those appreciations are treated just like their appreciated stock donations. That donor doesn't pay taxes, and they can write off the full amount.
And in fact, 2019, guys, is a year in which the market has been trending upwards quite significantly. And so I know many of our clients are sitting on significant gains right now that, assuming the market holds, will be there at the end of the year. And so we're expecting beginning of 2020, end of 2019 to be a pretty impactful year from a donations and gifting point of view.
Right. And think about how many nonprofits today are thinking about engagement and donor engagement. Go to nonprofits all over the country, and we are hearing that over and over and over again. Donor engagement with a younger demographic, right? How do I reach the millennials? Well, this is an area that, millennials are definitely the first and some of the fastest to adopt cryptocurrencies.
Well, certainly as that wave of millennials comes in and replaces the wave of baby boomers in the workforce, they're going to be the ones earning money. They're going to be the ones contributing. And you can see here the stats, 68% of high net worth individuals are already invested or plan to by 2022.
Yeah.
The affluent millennials there, they already have, or they're already using or holding cryptocurrency. They have appreciation. They're going to need to do something with it. And we bookended this way. Donors want to contribute appreciated assets. Nonprofits want to receive appreciated assets. And do you want to tell a donor or your board or your development team that you cannot accept a large cryptocurrency contribution?
Or you don't know how, or it might take a while, or, you know, stumble upon that. If you think about the donor and what that donor looks like, they're in cryptocurrency because they like the fast, they like the non-bureaucratic, they like all of that. And by you saying, oh no, but wait, hold on, I'm not ready for this, you kind of put yourself back into that population.
There's almost a tribal element to it as well, Dean, where what we see with our clients is once they make some money with crypto, they start to invest in crypto, it becomes important to them that the organizations they support, the clients they work with, including the service firms they work with, including our Menino, buy into this new world. And
That's
so it really helps in also creating goodwill with them. And by the way, you know, not to mention any names here, but we have had this last bullet point here happen where high net worth people would come to a not-for-profit and offer a good amount of money. And there was not a lot of thought put into how would we do this. And it's not as easy as, you know, let me just flip a switch here and download a piece of software, especially when you're talking about significant amounts. And the sort of the worst nightmare for a not-for-profit had to happen here, and they had to go back and ask the donor to hold on to the digital asset for what ended up being, I think, a good 2 weeks. And so luckily everything still happened as planned. But once someone is ready to donate, we don't want to, you know, have them wait for 2 weeks.
Right. And as you could see, only 1% of nonprofits accepted cryptocurrency in 2018. Be that earlier adopter is basically what we're encouraging people to do, and set up the policies and procedures to be active in this marketplace and to join the village.
Well, if someone decides they want to donate to a nonprofit that can't accept it, and you're on that short list.
You're winning.
There you are, less competition. So overall, you have to think, how is this going to affect my entity's governance? Is accepting it in alignment with your organization's risk tolerance and public perception? Well, is your firm an innovator or a traditionalist? And is this an opportunity to change that perception? Ultimately, is accepting crypto a PR opportunity or a risk for you? I think it's going to be a massive opportunity. It's, as you said, Dean, another opportunity to engage your donor. And ultimately, what you have to consider is it's just another type of property. It's new, but
well,
it's property.
And for most of our nonprofits, the gift acceptance policy that they have is if someone donates even something that, let's talk about what everybody's comfortable with today, which is a traditional stock donation. When they get that, they have the ability to receive that asset. Their policy says that most of them say that they will liquidate that stock within that day and then invest it in accordance with their investment policy. The thing is that they have the ability to receive that gift. It's a non-starter. It's like, oh yeah, thank you very much, donor. Here's what we're going to do for you. We want to acknowledge you this way. If someone were to approach you today and say, I want to make this gift in cryptocurrency, what are you going to do? And if it's a stop, that's a challenge.
So let me tell you what the ideal answer would be. It would be, that's great. What is the currency that you're trying to donate? Here is our public key. Here's our public address. Like I said, it's like an email address. And crypto people understand that right away. All they got to do is copy paste that address. Within a few seconds, that transaction will occur.
So, Dean, when people get that stock and they immediately convert it to cash, what do they then do with that cash?
They then invest it in accordance with their investment policy.
Which is often cash. So,
right.
Or is often stock. So you need to consider, should we update our investment policy, because you may want to convert that cryptocurrency into cryptocurrency per your policy.
That's exactly right. I mean, we are seeing more and more nonprofits invest in alternative type of investments. We all know about, St. Francis High School of Mountain View a couple years ago, turning $15,000 into $40 million. That hit the Wall Street Journal. So yeah, if that's something that your organization is keen to, and what if that all of a sudden brings you a whole new level of network, of community, because you're able to do that. Now you're on the inner circle with people who want to do this. Well, maybe that's something you want to consider.
So obviously you're going to need to update your gift acceptance policy, and you need to think about what those changes will be. So are you going to convert to cash immediately, or are you going to hold it? Is your current process for accepting property appropriate for crypto? Should you limit the amount of cryptocurrencies your organizations will accept? There are over 2,000. You see many entities say of the 2,000, we're going to accept 8 or 6, or just the few that they're comfortable with. And then how do you screen those cryptocurrencies? And then from a risk perspective, should you limit the amounts of cryptocurrencies your organization will accept? And then will you need to update your standard donor advice? All things to consider. So, all right, so you've made some considerations, you've made some decisions, you've documented. Now what do you do? How do you implement this? So at a high level, you're going to assess and design. You're going to have a technical and operational implementation. And then ultimately, you're going to continuously review that implementation and solution for optimization and best practices.
Yeah, and we've had a number of questions come in. We got to be mindful of time here. And if we don't get to your question now, we will certainly follow up through email. But yeah, I think one thing here, Eric, to highlight is that this is not as simple as just flipping a switch and creating a little exchange account and you're done. This does have custody controls, consequences that you should think through. You don't want to sort of have one person be in charge of your private keys. There's policies and procedures that you need to really think through and implement. And I think we've got a sample slide on what that could look like coming up. I know that's one of the questions that we just got in.
Right. It's almost like the move when organizations, I remember, being an auditor, and all of a sudden everybody had the ability, online banking became a thing, right? And all of a sudden it was, okay, well, who has the ability to wire transfer cash? Who can move investments? When online payroll became a thing, and people had ability to all of a sudden, direct assets. It's the same thing here, same controls, same best policies. It's just a new type of asset.
Yeah. So somebody asked, what if we wanted to convert crypto to cash or a more traditional asset? You can absolutely do that. It's not a problem. And there's a few different ways that you can do that, and exchanges that can help you with that. And there's even aggregators like SFOX that will look at different exchanges, exchange rates, and sort of find the optimal way to sell your crypto.
Yeah, I mean, I just recently had a friend who told me that he put his down payment on his house in Bitcoin.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
This is real.
Pizzas to houses.
Somebody else asked if we have templated PNP, I'm assuming policy and procedures for not-for-profits that we can share. So let's maybe jump to that slide here real quick. So this is just what I mentioned. So a few things that you're going to need here.
Let's go over this real quick.
Yeah, so it's a USD to crypto ramp, and that includes a few pieces. So you'll need a payment processor, a way to actually get the money over to you and limit any, it's almost like foreign currency exposure. It's cryptocurrency exposure throughout the time between when people want to make that donation and when you would be ready to receive that. Then you're going to need an exchange account. So we gave some examples there. And then you want to have a safe way of taking custody of the asset, which is cold or hot storage, wallets. And so what that means is it's basically a physical device. So that would be cold storage, or hot wallet is just something that lives online. And typically a combination of both is the best environment. And then there's accounting solutions that automate some of the tracking of what the dollar value would be of those amounts. Obviously, policy is something that you need to update. So this is
Let's go through this in detail, Andres.
Yeah. So this is one way to do it. There's different ways to skin the cat here. This is if you want to do it sort of as professional as you can, it'd probably end up looking something like this. Now this looks more complicated than it is. What it really is the payment processor is that ability to collect payments, and that's kind of where it starts. And then if you want to exchange back to USD, you're going to use that exchange layer. So the on-ramp, off-ramp, Coinbase, Gemini, Kraken. And then that money's, the cash is going to hit your bank account. The US dollar is going to hit your bank account. You can automate that entire process. You want to set up some level of an auto sweep between your payment processor and your cold wallet device. And then that cold wallet device has to feed into your subledger, your crypto accounting subledger, assuming that there is a period in which you're going to hold the crypto. And then things feed into your ERP environment. So this is just one example. Typically what we do is we do a quick assessment with our clients, figure out what they're trying to accomplish, how complex of a situation we need to build, and we end up with some variety of this, and then help them come up with some of the policies, procedures, some of the documentation that we need, make sure that the auditor is going to understand what's going on and they're not going to have too many concerns. I think one of the questions I got was around the auditors. There's absolutely some education that you might have to do unless you're working with our Menino on the audit side. Our auditors very comfortable with this stuff.
All right, this is all really, there's a lot to digest here. There's a lot going on. So being the accountant, I've given you a checklist. So nice, tactical and practical at a high level, what you'll need to do to implement a crypto solution that will enable you to accept your donors, your massively appreciated crypto contributions.
Yeah, and then contributions, and then the other thing is if you're an organization that maybe you're you're an attraction-based organization, or you're an event-based organization, and you deal with lots of people, accepting cryptocurrency is just form of payment. I feel like is another thing that you need to consider. Absolutely. Not just contributions.
Especially if you're looking for that younger generation, millennial generation customer. Okay, well, I think that
brings us to our final polling question.
Yes, and our last question is true or false. This webinar furthered your knowledge of blockchain technology. Give everyone a few seconds to get in their last polling question. Just as a reminder, you do need to answer at least 3 of the 4 polling questions today to receive CPE credit, and we will be sending out an email with a link to today's recording and slides. Okay, we'll close polls. And everyone said true.
Nice.
Andres, I'll tell you, I've heard you make this presentation in lots of different formats, whether it's real estate or nonprofit. Every single time we hear this, I think I learned something new. So this is good stuff.
That's the right way. And that's the way you have to think about this technology. You've got to hear this over and over and over, because there's so much mind-bending new stuff in here. But appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, it is happening fast. I know there's a lot of questions. Please feel free to reach out to us directly, and we definitely want to help your organizations move forward and be fast adopters in this space. So with that said, thank you, everyone.
And the questions that we didn't have a chance to answer during the webinar, we'll send you a follow-up email.
Thank you, everyone.